Hi, my name is Anna Akunto from the University of Texas at Austin, and in this video I'll provide a brief overview of the manual contents and the needed materials for the Pirate Math Equation Quest Small Group Intervention for Texas Word Problems in the STAAR Grade 3. STAAR stands for the State of Texas Assessment of Academic Readiness, which is the Texas version of a state standardized test. So in the STAAR intervention, a small group of students works with one teacher. So here we see a picture of one teacher working with 3 to 4 students in a small group. So the STAAR intervention was developed to support 3rd grade students in Tier 2 and 3 small group intervention who require supplemental math support related to solving word problems. The focus of this intervention is on single and double-digit additive schemas and multiplicative word problems in 4 schemas. Total, difference, change, and equal group, where the equal group is the multiplicative schema and the total difference and change problems are the single and double-digit additive schemas. So, as you may know, standardized tests have become an increasingly common method for evaluating student learning. The majority of items on high-stakes standardized math tests include word problems. And because word problems consist of a combination of words and numbers, students often experience difficulty in solving word problems. So in order to better prepare students to set up and solve word problems on standardized tests, we developed the STAAR Intervention Program. The STAAR Intervention Program helps students to apply the schema-based word problem skills learned in the Pirate Math Equation Quest intervention to solve word problems presented on standardized tests. The STAAR intervention includes STAAR release items, which are word problems that come directly from the STAAR and that are released by the state of Texas in order for teachers and students to use to help prepare for the test. Those release items have been incorporated into the intervention to best prepare students to solve these word problems in the future. The STAAR manual includes 3 sets of materials: the teacher materials, the student materials, and the supplementary materials. The teacher materials include STAAR guides, activity guides, and supplemental materials, and the student materials include lesson packets and supplemental materials. The supplemental materials are posters, maps, cards, and graphs. So the supplemental materials we see are listed in the student materials and the teacher materials, and they are also included in their own separate section so that they can easily be found, but they're listed in both places as they're needed throughout all lessons for students and teachers. So each STAAR intervention lesson is implemented 3 times per week for 6 weeks, and each lesson lasts 30 to 35 minutes. So each lesson in the STAAR intervention has 3 components: Math Fact Flashcards, which is a 2 to 3 minute activity; Shipshape Sorting, which is another 2 to 3 minute activity; and STAAR Problems, which are a 20 to 25 minute activity. I'll review each of these components on the following slides, and you can see our other videos for more information on each of these activities. So the first activity in a lesson for the STAAR intervention is Math Fact Flashcards, which, as I mentioned, is a 2 to 3 minute activity. In this activity, students complete 2 one-minute trials of addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division flashcards in a round robin. So for all the lessons 1 through 18, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division flashcards are mixed together and presented to students. So, however, if teachers should always assess students' needs and ability levels to determine which flashcards are most appropriate for each lesson. After students have spent a minute solving as many flashcards as they can in a round robin, students and teachers count the number of flashcards answered correctly. Throughout the activity, teachers monitor and provide feedback as necessary using counting up strategies as well. Finally, once the teacher and students have completed 2 one-minute trials and counted the flashcards, the students graph their higher score for the day on the Math Fact flashcard graph. The second activity in a STAAR lesson is Shipshape Sorting, which is a 2 to 3 minute activity. In this activity, students practice identifying word problem schemas learned during the STAAR problems by reading word problem cards, an example of which is seen here, and sorting them onto a map, which is seen here, during a 1-minute timing. Students identify word problem cards as belonging to either the total, difference, or change schemas. It's also important to note that students are introduced to the equal group schema during lesson 10, but there are no equal group cards included in Shipshape Sorting, so if teachers would like equal groups cards, they can develop their own and mix them in with the ones provided. So the third and final activity in every STAAR lesson is the STAAR Problems, which is a 20 to 25 minute activity. In this activity, students receive schema-based word problem instruction as they work with the teacher to solve total, difference, change, and equal groups word problems. STAAR problems serve as a guided and independent practice activity. Each STAAR problem section consists of 3 problems, A, B, and C, which is not pictured here. And these are solved using an I do, we do, you do method, where the teacher models the first problem and how to correctly solve it, which is problem A. While the teacher is doing that, students follow along. In problem B, the teacher and students complete the second problem together as a guided practice activity. And then in problem C, the final problem, students independently complete the activity, and teachers use this as a way to assess student learning and understanding and whether or not the students have mastered or are working on developing the concepts that they've covered that day. You'll also notice that during STAAR problems, students are introduced to the run attack strategy, a poster we see here. And they are also, once all 4 schemas have been introduced, they use the what do you ask yourself poster to help differentiate between the 4 schemas when solving word problems. So here we see the lesson schedule for the 18 lessons in the STAAR intervention program. The lessons are presented over 6 weeks, and there's 3 lessons per week. So for lessons 1 through 3, students focus on total problems. For lessons 4 through 6, they focus on difference problems. Lessons 7 through 9 focus on change problems. Lessons 10 through 12 focus on equal groups problems. And finally, lessons 13 through 18 are a review of total, difference, change, and equal groups problems. So as I mentioned, the STAAR manual consists of 3 sections: the teacher materials, student materials, and supplemental materials. I'm going to go ahead and talk about each of these sections in the following slides. So the first section is the teacher materials. And the teacher materials consists of STAAR guides, which are the lesson guides, which show teachers how to implement each lesson. They also consist of activity guides and also supplemental materials, which I'll talk about at the end. Since supplemental materials are part of the teacher materials, the student materials, and then they also are again presented in their own section, so I'll talk about them at the end. So the first section, the first component of the teacher materials are the STAAR guides, which provide a step-by-step guide for teachers on how to implement a lesson. So teachers should review STAAR guides before each lesson to ensure that they cover every concept addressed in the lesson. These STAAR guides are not meant to be recited verbatim and instead should be used as a guide. Some teachers use them to create an outline, while others keep them on hand to use as a reference during the lesson, and others rely heavily on the wording of the STAAR guides to deliver the lessons. Regardless of how you prefer to use the STAAR guides, it's necessary to study the lesson presented in the STAAR guide before delivering it to students so that you have a solid understanding of the material presented that day. It's also important that teachers elaborate on concepts as necessary depending on the group of students, regardless of if it's covered explicitly in the STAAR guide that day. Each STAAR guide is labeled with the corresponding lesson number. So for example, the STAAR guide for lesson 1 is labeled, as we see here, as lesson 1. Next in the STAAR guide are the activities for the day. So there are math fact flashcards, Shipshape Sorting, and the STAAR Problems and then underneath the STAAR Problems is the focus of the STAAR Problems that day. So for lesson 1, that would be total problems. So each of the activities are listed, and you'll notice here that Shipshape Sorting is crossed out. That means that activity is not taught in that specific lesson. So it's crossed out here in lesson 1 because it's not introduced until lesson 2. Next we see the materials, which are the posters, student materials, and teacher or tutor materials. And it's important that teachers should review this list and make sure they have all the materials ready to implement the lesson prior to implementing the lesson that day. Once the STAAR guides start, the teacher dialogue is bolded and student responses are unbolded. Additionally, when a new poster is introduced, it's signaled in italics and a picture in the STAAR guide. So here we see the display rules poster, which is in italics. And on the next page, you would see an image of the rules poster, which signals that the poster should be displayed for students to see. The next component in the teacher materials is the activity guides, and here we see an a Shipshape Sorting activity guide. So when teachers become familiar and comfortable with the lesson content and sequencing, they may choose to print out and refer to activity guides during lessons. The activity guides highlight the procedure for implementing core lesson components. Some teachers choose to exclusively use activity guides, which highlight the procedures for implementing the core lesson components, while others prefer to use them in combination with STAAR guides. There are activity guides in this manual for Math Fact Flashcards, Shipshape Sorting, the Run Attack Strategy, Total, Difference, Change, and Equal Groups Problems. The next section of the manual is the student materials. The student materials consist of the daily lesson packets and the supplemental materials, which I'll talk about later. Each packet contains 3 practice word problems, which we refer to as STAAR Problems. The STAAR Problems are release items from previous year's standardized tests. So the student materials needed for each lesson, or the STAAR Problems, are organized in a packet by lesson. So both pages for the STAAR Problems, for example, in this one, lesson 6, are presented together in a packet, and teachers should print this out ahead of time double-sided. Each packet includes 2 pages, which are the 3 STAAR Problems, A, B, and C. And again, the STAAR Problems are a guided and independent practice opportunity for students to solve word problems and for teachers to provide feedback. There are 2 pages with a total of 3 problems, which are presented using the I do, we do, you do method. First, a teacher models how to solve a word problem in the I do, or problem A. In problem B, the teacher and the student solve the word problem together as a guided practice opportunity, and the teacher provides immediate and corrective feedback. Finally, problem C is a you do, which serves as an independent practice where the student solves the word problem independently, and the teacher uses this to check student understanding, and it also allows the teacher to provide immediate and corrective feedback. The final section of the manual is the supplemental materials, and the supplemental materials contains teacher and student materials necessary to implement the lessons. So the final section of the STAAR manual is the supplemental materials, which contains the teacher and student materials necessary to implement the lessons. We see the counting up, addition, and subtraction poster, the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division math fact flashcards, as well as the math fact flashcard graph, the run attack strategy and schema poster. We see the total schema poster, and the difference, change, and equal groups poster are also provided in the supplemental materials, though they're not pictured here, as well as the what do you ask yourself poster. Also included in the supplemental materials are the Shipshape Sorting mat and the sorting cards, as well as the Pirate Math Equation Quest rules poster and 4 versions of the treasure map. The supplemental materials also list required materials which are not provided, such as the treasure box with prizes, treasure coins, a timer, and a pencil, as well as it also lists a dry erase board, painter's tape, dry erase board markers, and an eraser, which are used to assist students in solving equal groups problems. So the first poster found in the supplemental materials is the Pirate Math Rules poster. So teachers need to print out this poster and display it during the intervention for students to use. And then as students become familiar and comfortable with the information provided on the posters, teachers should fade the posters out. The rules poster is used in the beginning lessons or as needed to remind students of behavior expectations, and it's used in combination with the treasure map and coins to create a behavioral token economy. For more information on behavior management and how the token economy works, you can see our behavior management video and the motivation video. The next posters we see in the supplemental materials are the 4 different versions of the treasure maps to be used with the token economy. Students earn coins during lessons and place them on the treasure map, and then color in the designated number of spaces at the end of each lesson. So if a student earns 3 coins that day, they color in 3 spaces on the treasure map at the end of the lesson. Students receive a prize from the treasure box once the entire map has been completed. Teachers should print out at least 1 version of the treasure map before each lesson, and then as students fill out the treasure maps, they can continue to print out the same treasure map, or they can vary with different versions of the treasure map, depending on teacher and student preferences. And again, for more information on the treasure map and the behavior management strategies in the token economy, you can see our motivation video for more information. Next, we see our counting up, addition, and subtraction posters. Like our other posters, teachers need to print out this poster and display it during the intervention for students to use. Then as the curriculum advances and students become familiar with the information on the poster, teachers should then fade it out. The counting up, addition, and subtraction poster is a strategy used in our intervention to aid students in the addition and subtraction computation during Math Fact Flashcards and STAAR Problems. And again, you can see our counting up video for more information. Next, we see the materials necessary for the math fact flashcard activity. For this activity, it's required that we need the addition, subtraction, multiplication, division flashcards, which are provided in this manual, as well as the math fact flashcard graph. The addition, subtraction, multiplication, division flashcards are used simultaneously throughout all 18 lessons. However, teachers should assess students' needs and ability level to determine which flashcards are most appropriate for each lesson. Regardless of which flashcards the teachers decide to use, it's necessary that they print out and cut the flashcards prior to each lesson, and we suggest printing them on cardstock for durability. Each flashcard has an addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division problem on the front and the correct answer on the back. Teachers also need to print out the graph prior to the lesson so that students can color it in at the end of the activity. And again, for more information on this activity, see our math fact flashcard video. Here we see our run attack strategy, our schema posters, and our what do you ask yourself poster. As with all our other posters, teachers need to print out these posters, preferably on cardstock, and display them during the intervention. Then, as students become comfortable and fluent with the content on the posters, teachers then fade them out so that students don't become reliant on the posters. The run poster is an attack strategy used to help students set up word problems. The schema posters, the total poster, difference poster, change poster, and equal groups poster should be displayed as specific schemas are introduced. So when total problems are introduced, the total poster is displayed. When difference problems are introduced, the difference poster is displayed, etc., etc. These posters display specific steps for setting up and solving word problems after a schema has been identified. Finally, we see the what do you ask yourself poster. This is displayed once all 4 schemas have been introduced, which is in lesson 10. This poster aids students in differentiating between 4 schemas by providing a prompt, and it also encourages students to use gesturing and questioning to help recall the schemas and differentiate between each schema. Next, in the Shipshape sorting activities, students practice sorting word problems into schemas. To do this, they need the Shipshape sorting cards, seen here, and the Shipshape sorting mat, seen here, which are also found in the supplemental materials. The cards have a word problem on the front and the corresponding schema on the back, represented by a T for total, D for difference, or C for change. And these cards, like the math fact flashcards, should be print and cut out on cardstock before each lesson so that they can be used during the Shipshape sorting activity. It's also important to make sure that the student can't see the answer on the back of the cards when implementing the Shipshape sorting activity. It's also important to note that students are introduced to the equal groups schema, but there are no equal groups cards included in this manual. If teachers want equal groups cards, they can make their own and mix them in with the cards provided. Teachers also need to print out the sorting mat before the lesson so that students have it available to complete the activity. Finally, we see the timer. The timer here is necessary to complete the Shipshape sorting activity, but it's not provided, and teachers need to provide their own in order to complete the activity. So the materials seen on this slide are used throughout the program but are not included in the manual. So we see the treasure box and prizes. Instead of a treasure box, teachers can use any box that closes, and they can use any small prizes students may like. At the end of each lesson, when a student has completed filled up all the spaces on the treasure map, they receive a prize from the prize box, which is what it's used for here. We also see treasure coins. If teachers don't have treasure coins lying around, they can also use stickers, stamps, markers, or colored pencils. And these are used throughout the lessons to reinforce positive behavior. Next, we see the timer, which is used in math fact flashcards and Shipshape sorting, and this can be purchased at a teacher supply store. We also see a pencil, as students need a pencil to complete each lesson. And then finally, we see a dry erase board, that's this paddle here, with painter's tape, a dry erase board marker, and an eraser. So here you'll see that we see a GR, which stands for the groups, N, which stands for the number in each group, P, which stands for the product, and a multiplication sign that reminds students that the number of groups, groups multiplied by the number in each group, is the same as the product. This was used to help students understand that they need to determine the groups and the number in each group in order to find the product. And it's also used to help students in solving equal groups problems where the number of groups may be missing or the number in each group might be missing. Again, it's important to note that all these materials are necessary for completing the intervention but are not provided in this manual. So now let's take a look at some setups that teachers have used to implement the STAAR intervention. So here we see posters. This teacher has displayed all the posters. We see the run and total poster are displayed, the difference and change poster are displayed, the equal groups poster is displayed, as well as the what do you ask yourself poster. The counting up poster is also displayed here, and the rules poster is displayed here. The pencils are sharpened. The student packet is printed and stapled. We see the dry erase board with the blue painter's tape, the dry erase board marker, and eraser are also available for the student to use. The math fact flashcards are out, as well as the math fact flashcard graph. The Shipshape Sorting cards and mat are out, and they've been cut on cardstock and are ready for students to use. The timer is also out and ready for the teacher to use. And finally, the treasure map is out with treasure coins, and the previously earned coins from prior lessons are colored in. Here we see another example of a intervention setup. So here you'll notice that the STAAR problems are stapled, printed out in front of each student. The timer is on the table and ready for the teacher to use here. Pencils are sharpened. The math fact flashcard graph is out here. And posters have been faded out as this is a later lesson. So in this video, I provide an overview of the manual contents and the needed materials for the Pirate Math Equation Quest small group intervention for Texas word problems in the 3rd grade STAAR. I'd like to recognize IES, the University of Texas at Austin, and the Meadows Center for Preventing Educational Risk. Without their support, this research would not have been possible. Thanks for watching.